Hi everyone, so in this video I'm going to talk about how to look up city populations. So one of the things that I do in my filtering process when I get a hold of a tape is I want to avoid notes that are in rural areas because it might be hard to find realtors and vendors or contractors, and also just often the market to resell something could be really bad. So one of the things I try to do is filter for city population size. And the way I've done this kind of in the past is you end up, some cities you just know. So when you see big cities like St. Louis or Chicago, you kind of know those are obviously large. But then there's a lot of other cities that I'm not as familiar with, and I end up just looking them up on Google. And then I always have a hard time remembering. So, over time I would end up Googling the population of the same city over and over and over again, which is kind of not really efficient. So I'll show you what my approach is for being able to kind of quickly add that data in to a tape. So what I've got is a lookup table that I've created that's got population by city and state, and this thing actually goes all the way down like to 35,000 some odd rows. And I'm not gonna share this table out because this thing took quite a lot of work to create. I pulled this from various spreadsheets that I was able to find online and compiled it, and I've been updating this quite a bit over time. But what I do is when I get a tape, so here's my dummy tape I've been using for a lot of these videos. This is old, so don't try to bid any of this stuff. Okay, but I've got my list of cities, my list of states. Now the thing that makes this a little bit challenging is you will often have different cities in different states with the same name. So we're going to do a lookup through our table, but we can't actually just look up the city names. So like, for example, let me go back to my other spreadsheet here. Sorry, our computer's being a little slow for some reason. Not sure what it's doing because I don't even really have anything open. But so if we do a search for, say, Springfield, we've got Springfields all over the place, even in Colorado, Florida, which is weird. So the way that we get around that is we create what I call a helper column. We're actually combine the city and state. So within my tape, I'm actually going to insert two columns. I don't know why my computer's so damn slow. I'm going to probably re-record this. But I call this one helper. You can call it whatever you want. And then I'm going to look at my population. So what I want to do is combine the data that's in the city cell and the state cell. And the way I do that is I go equals, put in the city, and then ampersand, and then the state. And so now it's combining these two. So now I've got unique lookup values. So even though I don't know if there are, but if there happen to be like Birmingham's in multiple states, when I search for this Birmingham AL, that'll be a unique value. Okay. So then what I'll do is I'll create a tab here, and I'll just call it lookup. So I want to put my lookup table within the tape spreadsheet. Now, it is actually possible to reference other spreadsheets, but that's not really a good way to do things because as you move files around, you can break links and cause all kinds of problems. So even though these things are pretty big, I like to just copy them in. So I don't want to, get back up here to the top of this table. And in my lookup table, I've got a helper column and then my population estimates. So I'm just going to copy these two into here. I'm actually going to paste the values because I've got some formulas that are in there. Okay, so now I've got my lookup table that I can reference. Let me expand this again. Oops, change the view so you can actually see what's going on. So now in here, we're going to do a Vlookup. I know I've talked about this in other videos, but I'll just go over it again. So go equals Vlookup. And then the first thing I'm going to click is my lookup value. So that'll be this. My table array. And then this is my table array. I'm going to grab all these. So I'm going to click that cell. I'm going to go shift right. And then shift command down or shift control down to select the entire table. And now this part is kind of important. So within there, since I'm going to be copying down, I want to do command F4 or control F4 or function F4 on those so that when it's calculating the other rows, I don't want it to shift those cells, if that makes sense. I want that table to be fixed. And then my column index. So on that table, the value I want it to report is column 2. So it's kind of looking at the first one, reporting column 2. And then we want to go false so that it does an exact match. It can also do true. If you do true, it can pull values that are similar and it can potentially give you the wrong city. So always do false. And there we go. And then it fills everything in. And then what I can do is do a sort by ascending. So we got some towns here, 96 people, 100 people. And so what I would typically do is go into the tape and just start deleting all of those. And how small a city you want to go to is fairly arbitrary. It kind of depends on you and your model. I know people who do completely rural stuff and don't even use this filter. Right now I've been setting my cutoff at about 15,000, which is, again, sort of arbitrary. It's one of those I keep moving around. But it's a pretty quick way to see what's going on now. And then it seems like every tape I get, or every large tape I get, there's always like some new cities that show up, or the seller types it out in such a way that's unique. So here, like St. Louis, I've got St. Louis in my lookup table several different ways. They happen to go ST, no period, and then the space. So what I would generally do too is if I have new cities or new spellings that show up, I'll go ahead and update my master lookup table so next time those are there. One thing to point out about this method that makes it not quite foolproof is oftentimes there's small towns or cities that might have a population of like 2,000-3,000 people, but they're actually in the middle of a large metro area, or they border, another large town. So it might be a population 2,000 town, but isn't actually in a rural area. So it would still be something I would be very interested in because there's going to be, a healthy market there to sell and plenty of vendors around to work with. What I've been working on is adding another column to my lookup table that has kind of like a go, no-go that I can filter on, although that's sort of a work in progress, and I haven't really come up with a clean way yet to get a list of cities that are small population but near a large metro area. So if anybody out there has any ideas on how to do that in a clean way, not a manual brute force way, please let me know. I'd be interested in chatting with you about that. If you can help me out with that, I'd be willing to share the lookup table potentially and some other things. So anyhow, that's what I've got for you now. Hopefully that helps out. You can always drop me an email if you have any questions. Thanks. Oops.